I speak quite slow, and after Eminem, I sound super slow, so sorry about that. I will try to keep pace. I didn't expect someone to speak so early at 8:30 in the morning, but it's okay. Anyway, from React to React Native, how many of you use React Native already? 30%. Okay, so first part might be obvious. So how different it is. Well, tags are exactly the same because it's React underneath, so we don't have many problems there. And it just tags and props because it's JSX, and JSX works. And JSX is so much part of React that we consider it part of React. In reality, it's not. It's a library with React, but I never saw anyone using React without in the last 5 or 6 years. So, but it's not really the same because tags are different. And that was a choice. And they chose, for example, that the div is a view. They chose to map HTML in something else to represent more what's on mobile. And notice that it's uppercase V because it's a React Native component. It's not a tag anymore. While div can be written lowercase, uppercase, doesn't matter, it's web. And also UL is a view because, well, that's how it is. And also main is a view because we don't have any semantic in mobile. There's no Google crawling our website, so it doesn't matter. And the form is a view because we don't need to group anything inside a container because there's no, again, browser to handle what we do. So a table is a view, and this one is painful because tables were an amazing way to collect data together. So it was extremely easy to use tables up to 2015. So everything is a view. That's it. You can use React Native. So an input is a view. No. So close, but not everything is a view. So an input is a text input. And this kind of makes sense, okay? That's because you map what natively exists on iOS and Android, and you try to find a denominator. So onChange became onTextChange. And actually, onChange exists on text input. But most of the time we use onChange, we use a React synthetic event, which is mapped to a browser event, which is not exactly a DOM event, even if it looks like a DOM event, and you can access the DOM event. And you can use onChange on React Native, but onTextChange is amazing. Give you what you 99% of the time want, the text. So if any of you work on the React core, please add onTextChange on React because there's no reason not to have it. So let's play a bit. We learned that pretty much everything. It's easy. Let's try. And this is simulated. I really admire people who come here and do live coding. Next one is like this. I'm not going to do that ever in a conference. So we write a view, and that's what we have, a completely blank device. And to give you context, it took me 3 attempts over 2 years to write my first React Native app. And then I wrote it in 3 days. So it's just the beginning, which is always hard. Because you get nothing. You write hello, and you get an error. Let me zoom in. So it says a text string might be inside a text tag. So the good thing is errors are decently good now. 2 years ago, not as much. But now, OK, text tag. I put a text tag. Let's zoom. It's there. So if I were to try an H, I would thought this wasn't working at all. But it is. And the thing is, iPhone decided to have round corners, but the underlying concept is that you have a square screen, so it's there. So, okay, let's put a 20-pixel margin top. And it crashed again. It says, I don't know what pixel means. Now, this is actually interesting, because they decided 20 is the way to work in React Native. And so you thought, okay, why do I use pixel on web, but not here? Because web has pixel. But it's not true. So pixels were something when you have these huge monitors and you can see the pixel. They were real pixel. You can look close to the monitor and see a pixel. And then Apple created what is called Retina, and Surface created something better than Retina, but advertise a lot worse. So people think that Apple has the best monitor ever. No. But anyway, pixels are not pixel anymore on Chrome. They're not pixel on your screen, but we never admit that. So on web, we keep saying pixel or viewport size or root size or RAM or whatever. And on native, they made this choice to use numbers, which I think it makes sense. It's a lot easier to do calculations. So, okay, 20, perfect. So pixels are illusions anyway. One more thing. Here's a button, and it doesn't look like an HTML button, but I can cope with that. Here's a title and an on-press. But does that thing look like a button? To me, it looks like a blue text. So the thing is, on iOS is a blue text, on Android is a blue button with a white text, which is even more confusing. So the idea is we do what a button is to iOS users. When I started working in React Native, I have an Android phone. So I thought, okay, iOS users are weird. And now I have an iPhone, and I never saw buttons like that. So still doesn't look like a button. So at the end, we end up styling our own button, which means we use a touchable opacity with the text inside. And touchable opacity is a generic clicker which changes opacity when you click it. So, okay, and it still doesn't look like a button because now you have to style a button on top of a touchable opacity. So it's a nightmare for a button. One more thing. So let's say I have an array of numbers and I map them. So nothing fancy. Let me take some water. Jesus. So if I do this on web, it will look the same, except I cannot scroll that thing. That thing is an image. There's nothing I can do to see numbers after 25. So to do that, because scrolling is a feature, I should change view to a scroll view. Now I can scroll them. These kind of things make React Native a bit more hostile than web when you start. This is my inner sufferance. And draconian error handling. I put a picture of Draco because up to 2 days ago, every time I have a large audience, I recheck everything I think I know in my mind. And I thought draconian error handling comes from Dracula, the emperor of Romania, but no, it comes from Draco, the lord ruler of the ancient Greece. Anyway, what it means is if you make an error, it will go bad. So let's look at this code. I have a countdown, and when the countdown is 0, I just put 0 for simplicity. Then I want to write this time. And this one crash. Give you a second to guess why. Let's see the error. The error is text string must be rendered within a text component. So I've seen this way too many often from way too many developers. So let's see what's going on. You have countdown and something. And countdown is forced to cast by the double end. So it becomes a Boolean. Now countdown is 0 as a number. It became false as a Boolean. So it's evaluated as Boolean, and the something part is ignored because the logical end will stop at the first false. There's no reason to evaluate the second part of the condition. So at this point, countdown is printed and is cast again to be printed as 0 string. And 0 string should be within a text element. Now, this is not React Native. In React, it would print at 0. So you will see at 0. But in React Native, you see a crash. And a crash means your user cannot use the app anymore, which is a lot worse than at 0 hidden somewhere on the screen of your web browser. But I don't write countdowns, right? How often do you write a set timeout in React? Pretty much never. So let's see if you write something like this. You have an array and you check length. And if the array has a length, which means that the array exists, you output. So if you do this in React Native and that array is empty, your app crash. If you do this in web, you see it's 0. No big deal. Not nice, no big deal. So you can cast yourself. The only plugin I've seen that warns you about something like that is SonarLint, which is much, much nicer than any other plugin in warning you for potential issues. So if you write this in SonarLint, it will say, please cast this condition. Let's go to the second part. Let's talk about upgrading React Native. Yesterday, I was talking with someone. It was very spot on because he said, my biggest failure as a developer was I tried to upgrade React Native and I failed, which I totally understand. Oh, here you are. Didn't want to name shame. So how do you upgrade? It's like in the web. You go to packet.json, you upgrade the version. You have to upgrade 2 things because you have React and React Native, but it's okay. You upgrade, so you change the version number, which is fine. Notice I'm going from 17 to 18 and from 66 to 70. And then I check the changelog, which is something that I suggest you do every time you update the library. And very few people do. What you care about a lot is breaking changes, because you might not be able to retest your entire project. You want to know if you're using any feature that they decide to break. So you should check the breaking changes from the version you're moving on down to your version. It's boring, but once in a while, it makes a huge difference. So in this case, is remove just preprocessor. I can ignore that one, it's testing. And the second one is removing non-standard promise.prototype.done. So if I would read these and I would be in a big project, I would search a project for .done to see if any other developer ever decide to use an experimental feature. But let's say everything is fine. I run yarn install, and I have a coffee break because yarn install is low. Not as low as NPM, but it's low. And then I come back and I run the app, and the app crash on Xcode. And it always crashes on Xcode. It doesn't crash on the simulator. It crashed before the simulator. So I go on Stack Overflow and I search for my error, and I make bad changes. I don't know why, but Stack Overflow is somehow becoming Yahoo Answer. I find an enormous amount of horrible code suggesting that don't make sense. So I think 5 years ago, Stack Overflow was super good, and now you need to start understanding if the solution you find is a good one or not. But anyway, I go back here and it still crashes. The interesting thing, it always crashes on something that belongs to React Native that is never the same or exactly the same, but it crashes. So you give up and you go back to the previous React Native version and you run the app and it crashes. So, okay, because I did the stuff from Stack Overflow, let's reset, let's do git hard reset, hoping I didn't do anything else in that branch. And run the app, and it still crash. So you have 0 code changes, and it still crash. And what you do when this happens is that you delete node modules, and you run install again. That's what you use from web. And so you do that, delete everything, run the app, and it still crash. Because it's React Native. It's not that nice. So you come down. Normally I go on YouTube and I search those videos. If you're on TikTok, there's always someone to tell you become a millionaire if you just take a free music and a free background. Maybe from React Native developers you do. And then you delete everything because you have no other choice. So you delete node modules, iOS cache, Android cache, Yarn cache, Xcode cache, Metro cache, Brew cache, restart your machine just in case there's a cache you didn't think about. And then you delete your Chrome browser history because you don't want anyone to know what you were watching to relax. What impressed me is how many cache you clean without really knowing what they do. Like, I don't know why I clean Yarn cache because I don't have any private repos. So I think that one is useless. But every time you do 5 out of 6 of these is around 1 to 2 hours. So you just want to do all of them once. So you're back to square one. Nothing update. It will run, but you didn't update. That was your aim. You wanted to update the app. So let's try again. Took me a few years to learn a processor, you open rndif, and you find your version. So rndif do the basic install of React Native for every single version, committing a branch, and you can diff those branches. So you know exactly what the core team changed in a project to work. And now I wasn't doing a huge jump, I was doing a 2 version. So you click on your version, and that's the number of changes. It's 154 addition, 128 deletion. I will sum up. You have to change 282 lines to update React Native on your machine. So you're a developer, you search a script. There should be a script. It's impossible that a human being changes 300 lines every month to update. So you run the script, because you find the script, someone wrote one, and you accept that the script doesn't work. I've been through this loop around 6 times. It never worked. Never. Not a single update I was able to do through the automatic script update. So, fine. Rainforest music, and you go line by line. And this process takes maybe half an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But you need to be 100% focused, because if you do one mistake, you have to check the 252 lines again. And then you reach this file, which is called Xcode project, and you're screwed, because that file is generated by Xcode. There's no way you can manually apply a difference to that file. So once you reach that file, you skip that and pray. And the good thing is, it works. It always works. I don't know why. Xcode always works till it doesn't, but it usually does. So you do React install, and then you do pod install, because from 0.60, React Native switched to pod natively, which is a great, great thing. If you started before, it was painful. And then you get an error because you have to do pod update because you changed the React Native library, so you need to update the pods as well, but that's fine. Pod update. Then you clean every cache because you learned that you have to clean cache. And then you download 12 gigabyte updates because Xcode updates, and you have to re-download everything and all the simulator and the... Anyway, it's okay unless you're on a mobile connection in a remote island, which I was that time. And it runs. And that's the magical symbol. It says running on iPhone. I don't know why there's a warning next to it. I don't care. It runs. So it's okay. But it doesn't work. And that's the interesting thing. When it runs on Xcode, it doesn't mean it works in the simulator. It just means it runs. You feel super happy, but then kind of. And you find a broken library. And that's a problem. The ecosystem of React Native is not as mature as React. So most of the libraries you use are made by someone with a problem that worked for it for a year on that library and then dropped it. As you heard in the talk before, the stars would not pay you. So I actually, one of the cases, I find the author and I say, how much money do you want to fix your library? And it was like 800 pounds. Sure, fix it. So there's no updates in the library, and you change the library, and it runs and works. Now, the good thing is, normally when the libraries are not maintained is because they are small. Like it happened to me with React Native Mask, which is for phone numbers, and normally it's easy to replace them. And not as easy to fix them. But okay, it works in iOS. Let's test Android. The Android simulator is painful. It's super slow. It starts super slow. So it's the last thing you test, always. Either you connect a real device, which is a bit faster, but you don't want to test that. But it works on Android. So it's amazing. Let's ship. So you ship to tester. If you do it yourself, either you have a CI that does it, or you just build it locally, put it in Google Play, send it to tester, which can be, I think, up to 100 users. And it doesn't work for them. So you clean every cache on your machine, trying to figure out why it worked on your simulator and it doesn't work for them. And now, does it work? So you search for Stack Overflow problems, and nothing. The good thing is the Android problems are usually easier to find than the iOS one, because they are code-based, while iOS is open Xcode and drag this thing, which you will never find, to this spot, which you will never find. So you start Stack Overflow again. You take a 30 minutes break, and it's broken for everyone. And that's a real story. So Google broke Maven at 10:30 p.m. my time, and I was in Madeira, and I was going crazy because nothing worked. And I ran it a second ago, and it was working. And practically I find out that Maven, it's like NPM, including all the problems. So they can break a dependency even if you didn't change version, and you cannot download what you need anymore. So that night and for 2 days, React Native was broken for everyone trying to build. That was a nightmare. So to update, create a new project and copy your changes over. It's a lot easier than trying to update your own. And obviously I'm kidding, because if you try to do that, you end up with another issue, which is rename the project, and it doesn't work. And there's a script for that which kind of works, but even copying over a project to a new project. For example, I wanted to make Imexel Junior, which is the high school version. I tried to copy Imexel, and it was 2 days of work just to copy a project across. So anyway, let's talk about device differences. So when I started coding, it was around 2000, and we had two browsers. We had Internet Explorer 6, and I'm really happy I didn't start with 5.5. And we had Mozilla Firefox. So Internet Explorer 6 has its own standard, and Firefox has the W3C standard, which is pretty much what you're used today. So everyone tried to code for Firefox and pray that it works on Explorer and try to fix it on Explorer and learn an enormous amount of... Anyway, it doesn't matter because we're not there anymore. So Chromium came out. Chromium was more standardized, and Google pushed a lot for it. And the main reason why they pushed for it is that they are a web-based company. So they wanted the web to be better. They wanted Google Docs to work, Google Drive to work. So they made Chrome, and Chrome was amazing. And cross-browser issues are extremely rare today. I don't test cross-browser anymore. I let the QA test. So back 20 years ago, we test every single browser because we had to fix stuff. And now, I think I never had cross-browser issue. And I say never, thinking that Safari has a problem with transform over 500 pixel that max with Z-index. But apart from that, I never had issue. So React Native handles the component for us, which means, in theory, we shouldn't have any cross-browser issue. But you guys, it's not that type of conference. So let's separate if you're working for iOS or if you're working for Android. So if you're working in Japan, US, UK, pretty much iOS is 50% of more of your users. But if you target India or Nigeria or Brazil, then you have a lot more Android users, and probably not the Android devices you're used to. So iOS users change their phones pretty much every year. You see the pictures, take you 3 hours to get the new phone because the new phone is 2% faster. It's funny because I have an iPhone. So the point is not that the new iPhone is 2% faster, it's that the old one is 50% slower. Because iOS decided to slow down all phones, they say to save your battery. That's real. Now you can choose, there's an option. But for a year, people were like, my old phone is lower since the new one came out. And they were like, haha, you're crazy. No, they were doing it. Anyway, this is not a talk about politics. Because if it was a talk about politics, we would talk about how Huawei was banned by Trump with an executive order. So Trump decided that China shouldn't get American top technologies, so they say you cannot get Google stuff anymore. Now, Huawei is a huge company, and that change means in one signature of one president, we lost 20% of our users on Google Play. That's a nightmare. It means we need to learn how to use a new Play Store for Huawei because they cannot use Google Store anymore. They can if they really want to, if they install an APK, but most users will not install an APK. So you need to set up an entire streamline of payment and download and everything and figure out a lot of stuff. But anyway, this is not a talk about corporations issue because we don't care about them, right? Because if it was a talk about corporation issues, we'll talk about how Amazon created their own app store, which I guess we never used. I never used it because I don't have a Kindle Fire. But the thing is, Kindle Fire are cheaper. So in a country with less money, people would have a Kindle Fire because it's a lot cheaper. But this is not a talk about third world countries. Because if it was, I would talk about how Facebook tried to create a basic internet program that only allow you to access Facebook. So the idea was we fly airplanes from poor area of India, giving internet as long as internet means Facebook. And they had a 2 years fight with the Indian government, and then India said, no, we will find a cheaper fiber, but we don't want you to be internet in our country. But this is not to talk about planned obsolescence, because if it was, we would talk about how Android in one day decided to send an email to every developer saying that they will not support all devices anymore. Now, I got this email 1 year earlier than it actually happened. And I thought, well, it's a security thing, so let me update my apps right away, which was easy. You go on Build Gradle, you change the version, and 80% of my users the day after couldn't use my app anymore. So they start rolling these out, which a majority of users still using a version of Android that couldn't update the app. So if today you have an old Android, you cannot use anything. You cannot you cannot update WhatsApp, your banking. So pretty much they decide that every device before a certain year and every device of a cheap productor, because they use an old version of Android, are gone. They're useless. You cannot download anything on them. But this is not a talk about React Native. No, it is a talk about React Native. But never mind. Okay, let's talk about React Native for a moment. So, iOS usually works on all devices. Android works on all modern devices. Kind of. That's because Android has a million screen size. Now, on iOS, the good thing is if you work for iPad, you have a different option. You can say, I want to work for iPhone. You can say, to work for iPhones and iPad. And now you can say, I want to work for the M1. But it's very easy to test. There are 6 models, 10 if you have old ones. But Android is a nightmare. They have any size of screen. So, okay, I need to deal with this somehow. And somehow is, let's get the dimension of the screen. Pretty much as Windows does screen size. So you think this works? Samsung. So I start getting a lot of emails from random people. My app has around probably 150,000 active users. So I start getting emails with like, this specific thing doesn't work on my device. And what I thought is, maybe they started on a landscape and then they switched. Something like that. And it was very sporadic, but once in a while, someone had an issue and then they disappear because normally I ask like, can you tell me more about which phone are you using? And then I find out it was Samsung, and Samsung has this special menu of hell. So it's hard even to find this image on Google. Practically every app you start has an option to change the resolution perceived. So it's kind of a zoom option. And practically when you do the dimension get windows, you get the native resolution, not the optimized Samsung resolution. And that's a nightmare. I think React Native should deal with it, not me as a developer, but they don't. So this is the best code I found. My suggestion is if you end up having to use dimension, find this slide back, copy this. I tried like 5 different ways using pixel ratio, using scale, anyway, this works. You can try, you can move it to hooks. So let's talk about storage. And modern phones have a lot of memory, so we should never worry about storage, I guess. Of course. So storage has 2 components, the size of the app and the amount of data that your app has. Now, the app size matters because users download it, and the other one matters. Anyway, for storage, there is async storage. I put 3 dots because it was moved from React Native to React Community, but it doesn't matter. It works. You can read, write, rehydrate your app. It's a key value store. It works. You can just use it. Do you believe it just worked? Nothing ever just works. So what about security? What is the security of the async storage? Which is none. It's completely nothing. It means anyone on Android device, if they can access the disk, they can access all the data of your app. So you need to use a secure async storage. And it's fine. Do we care about security? Is your app containing anything that should be protected? And the answer is yes, because what is sensitive data? And is the usage of an app sensitive? It's even the time I open the app of any security relevance. And probably this should be a talk by itself, but I give you a couple of ideas. So this is not to talk about big data and what you can do with it. Because if it was a talk about big data, you know the new Apple Watch, they measure temperature. It's your body temperature. What can you do with it? Well, you can figure out if a woman is pregnant. And then you end up with a huge country where abortion became illegal and they can come to your house if they find out you're pregnant in advance, which they might, or, as it happened to someone who miscarried a child without choice and was arrested for abortion because they didn't know if she provoked it or not. So a data like your body temperature, which cannot be used for much, it can be used for a lot. I worked a few years in security. I had companies coming to sell their products, and you have no idea what your data can be used for. So, for example, there was a company selling how likely are you to be a criminal, and they analyze where you buy grocery, where you lived, who are your friends, because maybe if you buy grocery at 2 a.m. in a place where they sell drugs, you're more likely to be a drug user because you were just there buying something else. Maybe if you move around from 9 to 11 and you don't work for Deliveroo, you got it. So all data should be private. That's my idea. And I don't think phones should allow data to be unencrypted in any case. It should just encrypt everything. There's no reason not to. And by the way, Apple said they will not encrypt in case the FBI asked. And the worst part is, because I work in a company with government requests, if the government asks you to give their data, you should give it, and you're not allowed to tell your user that you're giving it. Because if you tell them, that's a security breach, because then your users would know. So you don't even have a way to know if a company is giving data or not. So try to encrypt as much as possible. Okay, and let's talk about storage size. So Android has a memory limit, which you don't know till you hit it, which is 6 megabytes. So you have 6 megabytes of data. And the reason I find out about this limit is that with Imexel, I try to use my server as little as possible because I pay for it. And so I was downloading the entire database of questions and hints on the user phone. And it's translated in 6 languages, so when the user changed language, he also downloaded a different language. And I find out if the user changed language 3 times, the app reset, the user loses all their data, and they had to start the game again. And so I started looking into this. I tried to increase it. The thing is, it's pretty much 6 megabytes. If you try to increase it, for some reason, it doesn't always work. So think about that when you're working on Android. You have a limit of what you can store in the async storage. And the other problem is who are your competitors? So a user will never give up one of those. Maybe one, yes, but if they use WhatsApp to chat, they will never uninstall WhatsApp for your app. So it doesn't matter how important your app is, they will prefer WhatsApp. And Facebook and Instagram. And the biggest problem is their memories. You are competing against people that only have a mobile phone and they have the picture of their children, their family, their breakfast, I guess. But the thing is, those who are you competing against? So try to keep your app small because you'll never be as important as the top apps they use or their memories. Do you remember when WhatsApp introduced a limit to forward, and that's because in India they were killing internet by sending good morning, and phones were getting full. And Android phones, when they get full, they stop working. So that was a big issue. Anyway. So find a way to test your app as if it's running for a while. Find a way to inject data that the user will actually get over time. Unless you have a server for everything, in that case, it doesn't matter. So a couple of final thoughts. So React Native is amazing. I started and I loved it. I love that I can just publish the app and it works. I don't have to pay for domains. Well, you have to pay the 100 euros to iOS for the privilege. But it's okay. It's amazing. It has different set of issues. But there are 3,793 new apps a day. So that's what you are competing against. And they have money. That's the other problem. I get emails every week saying, do you want to buy fake downloads, fake reviews? So you're competing against companies that have a lot more money than you as a person if you decide to publish an app. So it's hard. And it's hard even if you have an amazing app. That's what I learned. So don't make an app to be rich. Exactly as you don't make open source project. I think in general, startups to be rich do not work. So Imexola has 1.5 million downloads. At the end came with a Lamborghini. Actually, it doesn't make any money. It made money to break even for a while now and slightly below breaking even. So even if you have downloads, even if you have real users and paid users, because Imexola has paid users a lot, it's still incredibly hard because it's super competitive. So Imexola is about acquiring knowledge. That's why I created it. It's a puzzle game. And it's a puzzle game where you have to go on Google and search for stuff. You have to learn. That's the entire point. So I care about getting knowledge. So my advice is keep learning. It doesn't matter. Don't do the app for money. Do the app to learn. Start using React Native if you can, because JavaScript is becoming present everywhere. Even if I hope they will not make airplanes in JavaScript. But I'm happy you can use it for everything. You can use it for intelligent device. So just keep learning. Because we code the future, pretty much. Because JavaScript is becoming the main language. And at this point, I don't think there will be a new language for the web. And without a new language for the web, I doubt there will be a language which is so present as JavaScript. Anyway, this is my email. I put it at the end, so if you didn't like something I said, if you don't agree with something I said, you can write to me. And the interesting thing is, I can see here, but when you were talking about CISL, people write to you like, why is paid? And on Imexo, people write to me death threats, because apparently if a game says that you are not as smart as you think, you get angry. So the funniest one was, and it's always an American woman, which by the way was called Karen, but I think it was completely incidental, but it was extremely funny. And she wrote to me, you made my children cry. I hate you. And it was like the game stayed 15 plus. And I did that because I didn't want any child to cry. 15 plus, your problem. You're a bad parent if you make your children download it. But anyway, I said, it's 15 plus, so I'm sorry, but it stayed clearly. And she replied, if you would take fire, I would turn off the water so you burn in hell. So that's to say you can write whatever you want. You will never beat Karen or many, many other death threats I got over the last 3 years. So it's okay. And that's it.